And we carried the suitcases up the stairs and down to the other platform. And by the time we arrived with the last suitcase, the train was going on, out. And we were stranded. Anyway, the station master was very helpful. And there was a hotel in the place. We had no money, of course. And we explained that our sister, who was in the train already, she didn't realize it's going to suddenly go off. And she has our tickets, our passports, and the money. So he telephoned the border between France and Italy, and told the station master to ask our sister to find her and get our passports and our tickets and some money to pay for the hotel. So that the next train was due at 6 a.m. next morning. So we had to share a double bed with that sister. Anyway, we got to Rome, but we lost the whole day. So I only had a travel document from England because my Hungarian passport expired, and the Hungarian embassy during communism wouldn't renew it unless I went back to Hungary for good. Because I had nobody there anymore, neither the convent had any houses. They were all confiscated by the communists. I stayed with our sisters in Rome, and the next day I went to visit my parents. I visited my parents the next day, because going by train it took longer, even though the train was at 6 a.m. It was the second part of the day by the time we got to Rome. And so we went first to the convent, and then next day it was the superior of the convent that suggested I better remove my veil. We had a big collar and a white thing like that, and the black veil, and said, your parents are going to have a bigger shock seeing you dressed like that. So I took off my veil and went, the dress, I only had the one dress, so I couldn't change that, and went to visit my parents. They were in terrible conditions, health-wise. When I got to my parents, my father just said one sentence, one word. Why? Couldn't understand. We were such a happy family, really. Mm-hmm. However, a year after he died, but I couldn't get to his funeral. In those days, for the special permission, I had to go and visit them anyway. I couldn't ask to go and visit them again from England. However, one of the sisters from Rome used to visit my sisters and my mother. And she saw that their life was very hard because they didn't want to put my mother in a home. She had 4 heart attacks. And my eldest sister had a business that was started with her husband. And they badly needed help. So she asked the sisters in England to allow me to go and help them. So I went to look after my mother. Mm. And my sisters both lost their faith in God, because both lost their husbands. The other one, the younger one, her children were in Israel, and she couldn't leave the other sister, who was not well anyway. So both of them managed the business and look after my mother. When I came, it was a big relief for them that they didn't have to worry about my mother, our mother. So I used to pray with my mother. She never used to have breakfast before she said her prayers. So we prayed in Hebrew. It seemed to have somehow consoled her that at least I believed in God still, and she did too. And I stayed with her the whole year, and it was during the Vatican Council. And I said to my sisters, it was a Sunday, that their shop was not open on Sunday. If I could go to the Vatican and have a look at all those hundreds of cardinals there. And I went to Mass in the Vatican. And my mother seemed to be all right at that moment when I left. Obviously, I mean, it was a great thing to see the whole council together, all these mitres, you know. It's a terrific occasion. But I rushed home again as soon as Mass was finished, only to find that my mother died 5 minutes before. I was so upset not to be with her. However, we had a priest who was also a Jewish convert, who happened to be in Rome at the time. And he came to my mother's funeral and gave her the last blessing. And it was such a relief to me. But nobody knew that what he was. You know, it was a Jewish cemetery, a Jewish funeral service. And he used to say to me, and people asked him, "Father, you are a convert, aren't you?" I said, "Me, a convert? No, I just carried on." Means that as a Jew, she doesn't have to convert because she already believed in God. But he added to it by believing in Jesus. For him, the Messiah has come. And I must say that I say to people when they ask me, "What do you say about yourself? What are you?" I say to them, "I am a fulfilled Jew." Because you can't cease to be Jewish. You know, for me it's permitted to go to the synagogue and take part in a religious ceremony or religious service. It doesn't offend Jesus, because he used to go to the synagogue as well. You read it in the Gospel. I must say that since then, there's so much progress has been made. What I haven't told you is that John the 23rd was anxious that somebody should propagate the encyclical that he gave. It is called Nostra Aetate. Have you heard of it? And he charged Cardinal Bea to choose a congregation that will promote it. And he chose our congregation to promote that encyclical. Have you ever read it? That John the 23rd said that we must be grateful to have inherited the Bible from the Jews, and we must be grateful for it and be friends with them and learn from them how to interpret it, because it was written by Jews. And there are commentaries on the Bible called the Talmud and the Gemara and the Kabbalah and all those books. And it helps one to understand God's plan for humanity. Because if you read the Psalms, so many places it says that all the nations will praise you, Lord. And so prophecy is being fulfilled by Jesus' coming. And we must be reconciled among ourselves. You know, it's such a shame that for all those centuries, Christians didn't communicate with each other, you know, different denominations. And now we in this center, for instance, we have even suggested to us to give up our school next door. We had a junior school and high school. They're up to the age of 18. We brought up generations of girls who will be the future mothers. And mothers have a great influence on their children. To respect everybody's faith and not to be against anybody. You mustn't judge anybody. Only God has a right to judge. And I must say that our old pupils often come back and attend our conferences here. And they are so grateful for their education. And also the relationship between churches has improved enormously. There is an organization here in London called themselves Churches Together in Notting Hill. And we meet once a month. We have prayers together for about 20 minutes. And we bring our own sandwiches. And every time it's in a different church. And I spoke up one day at the service and told them that at the beginning of the war, churches never communicated with each other. Now the churches are more united than ever before. And what's more, there is an organization called the Council of Christians and Jews, and we are members of it. And they organize lectures, invite rabbis and Jewish professors to give talks with different denominations present about how to understand the Bible. And it's a wonderful atmosphere. We're going to have, we established a lecture which we have once a year in May. When we invite all those we have on our mailing list to come to it. We don't charge any entrance fees, and it's always packed out. But we can only have a certain number, like 85 from outside, plus ourselves, because of the fire regulations. So it's always packed out. People from every church come, and the Jews come. and listen to it, how much progress we have made between churches and the churches with the Jewish people. We have associates who are not sisters. They could be non-Catholics, they could be men as well as women who do our work. Because you don't have to be a sister of Zion to work for reconciliation. There was one woman I met who is an associate. She said, when I hear people speaking disparagingly about Jews, I don't let them get away with it. I tell them that it's against the church's idea that we must be friends with everybody or respect everybody. I must say that the chief rabbi of England and the Commonwealth, he is a very broad-minded man. He writes articles in the Times. You know, the Times is a leading newspaper in England. Gives lessons about freedom, citing from the Passover, when the Jews were liberated from being slaves and were given their own land and were 40 years in the desert going towards the promised land. It's fantastic. He said, if you are not free, you are like the Jews that were in Egypt. Once God liberated you, you have to live up to what God wants. You know, and would you like to read this article? I've got a copy of it. Mm-hmm. It's really wonderful. He wrote over 40 books, the chief rabbi, educating people of the right attitude towards each other. A most broad-minded man you can imagine. And a great favorite of everybody. Fortunately, he has to resign now, being chief rabbi. He will be a pensioner now. Next year. So, you know the last word I put in this, you got a copy, our aims, which was Martin Buber, you heard about him. He foretold in 1916, before the State of Israel was, he said, we do not want Palestine only for the Jews. We want it for the whole of humanity, when the restored Zion will be a prayer house for all nations, the center of the earth, the center place of burning prayer in which the blood-stained capes of war will burn. That's a quotation from Isaiah. And they will then turn spears into plowshares. That also comes from Isaiah.